Lamentations chapter 1 verse 16. I weep for these things, my eyes flow with tears. Far from me is any comforter who might revive my spirit. Hallelujah, ani vochia, Hallelujah, ani vochia, ani vochia, Hallelujah, ani vochia, ani vochia. Ani vochio, ani, you're the mayim, ki rachak mimeni, menachem eshim nafshi. Ani, you're the mayim, ki rachak mimeni, menachem eshiv nafshi. You're the mayim, ki rachak mimeni, menachem eshiv nafshi. Lo, 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 For Tisha B'Av, our cherished litany of loss by Rabbi Menachem Creditor. You, Jerusalem, God, your name burns my mouth. Golden watchtowers, heart-pulsing sacred stones, center of the universe, lion's share of all the beauty that could be. Millions clamor for your love. You, O Jerusalem, eternal city, why do you sit alone? I miss you so very much. I miss you in your absence, long for you because you are not here, because I am not there with you. That is about me, not about you. I mourn for myself when I mourn for you. Just now, I walked your streets, wept at your renewed splendor, and excessive spenders cried over the ruins and the ruined people who adorn you. Stones without end absorb us all, joyful shouts and fallen souls. Estranged brothers and sisters, inches away from each other's hearts. Hidden are the divine ledgers of sin, but lists upon lists of right and wrong are still kept. Those ancient stones have witnessed it all. Smothered sigh and fierce anger, ignited faith and craven hunger, brokenness, artistry, ecstasy, and light, build, burn, burned, dance, eat, eaten, eaten. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you poor, aching city. You spread your worn hands for help, but there are no comforters who truly listen. You sitting alone under all of us is all of us sitting alone under and on top of each other. 2 temples, 9 days, 3 weeks, 67, 2,000, 6 million. All numbers, our cherished litany of loss. You call to all your lovers, but we, one of your beloved lovers, hear only our own name. But today's strange gift, longing for what is already restored, might we finally remember to cease pretending we own your infinite beauty, that your ruin is our own making. Haven't we mourned enough to learn that we belong to you, not the other way round? Turn us that we might return, for we have forgotten Jerusalem. You burn me. So we come here today at the beginning of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, to mourn together. And it can be difficult for us in the modern world to put ourselves in the place of our ancient ancestors in the 2 destroyed temples of our past. But generations and generations and generations ad nauseum later, we are still here and we still remember. And Tisha B'Av is about more than just mourning the 2 temples. So according to the Mishnah, one of our classical Jewish texts, we mourn 5 main tragedies on Tisha B'Av. The first, it is said that on this day, it is the day that the spies from the Torah returned from scouting the land of Canaan. And they brought a negative report. And this resulted in the Israelites wandering in the desert for 40 years instead of fairly directly entering Eretz Zavat Chalav Udavash, that land flowing with milk and honey, the promised land. Second, on this day, it is said the destruction of the first temple occurred in 586 BCE by the Babylonians, led by Nebuchadnezzar. This was followed by the Babylonian exile, which would be in current-day Iraq. Third, on this day it is said that the destruction of the second temple also occurred in the year 70 CE of the Common Era, this time by the Romans, led by Titus. This was also followed by exile and diaspora. Some say we are still in that exile. Number 4, on this day, the Bar Kokhba revolt, which took place between 132 and 136 of the Common Era, was crushed, and the last Jewish stronghold, Beitar, was destroyed, which resulted in the killing of thousands of Jews. 5th, on this day, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem was plowed over, and it was rebuilt as a pagan city by the Romans, led by General Turnus Rufus. While these 5 are listed in our Mishnah, Tisha B'Av has also become a day for mourning other Jewish tragedies that occurred throughout history, many of which are said to have happened on this date, such as the ending of the Spanish Inquisition and the Jewish expulsion from Spain in 1492, the declaration of the First Crusade in the year 1095, the outbreak of World War I in 1914. It is also said that Heinrich Himmler approved the horrific final solution on the 9th of Av, 1941, not so long ago. And that the mass deportation of Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto to Treblinka concentration camp occurred on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, just 1 year later, 1942. While it could be that some of these dates are correct, and some might be, perhaps that doesn't matter for today. It is simply a day to come together, to allow ourselves the space to feel. Throughout the Jewish year, we run the gamut of emotions, and we do not shy away from sadness. We do not shy away from grief. And we come together to feel grief, sadness, joy together. We understand, I hope, that sadness and grief are not weaknesses, are not to be avoided, but that they are simply a rung on the holy ladder to growth, to more insight, to empathy, to understanding. On Tisha B'Av, we traditionally read liturgical poems which are called kinot. We shall choose one, an interpretation of chapter 5 of Eicha, Lamentations. So kina, the singular of kinot, means to cry, to wail, or lament. You'll hear the word alas in English repeated over and over. In the Hebrew, it's oi, repeated throughout the chapter. Remember, Lord, what has occurred to us. Alas, look and see our disgrace. Alas, what has occurred to us? Our property has been handed over to strangers, alas. Our homes to foreigners, alas, what has occurred to us? We have become orphans without a father, alas. Our mothers mourn in the month of Av, alas. Oi, what has occurred to us? We had to purchase water to drink, alas, because we abused the water libation. Oi, what has occurred to us? We had yokes put on our necks, alas, because we hatefully persecuted others, alas, what has occurred to us? To the Egyptians we stretched out our hand, alas, and the Assyrians trapped us like a hunter, alas, what has occurred to us? Our ancestors have sinned and are no more, alas, and we suffer for their sins. Alas, what has occurred to us? Slaves rule over us, alas, because we did not release our slaves. Alas, what has occurred to us? We risk our lives to get our bread, alas, because we closed our hands to the needy. Alas, what has occurred to us? Our skin has shriveled as from the heat of an oven, alas, because they exchanged their honor for disgrace. Oi, what has occurred to us? They tortured the women of Zion, alas, because we violated our friends' wives. Alas, what has occurred to us? Princes were hung by their hands, alas, because they were violent and robbed the poor. Alas, what has occurred to us? Our young men were forced to carry millstone, alas, because they were found in the houses of harlots. Alas, what has occurred to us? The elders ceased to be at the city gates, alas, because they perverted the judgments against the orphan and widow. Alas, what has occurred to us? The joy in our hearts has ceased. Oi, because we annulled our pilgrimages to the temple. Oi, what has occurred to us? The crown has fallen from our head, alas, because our holy temple has burnt down. Alas, what has occurred to us? Mahaya lanu. It is due to this that we became faint-hearted, alas, because the honor of our beloved house has been removed. Alas, what has occurred to us? For Mount Zion has become desolate, alas, because we have placed an abomination on it. Alas, what has occurred to us? For you, Lord, shall reign forever, for your throne endures from generation to generation. Lador vador. Why have you forgotten us forever and forsaken us for so long? Return us to you, Lord, and we will return. Renew our days as of old. For if you utterly despised us with an exceedingly furious anger against us, return us to you, Lord, and we will return. Renew our days as of old. Return. Turn us back. Turn us back, O Lord, to you, and we will turn, renew our days as before. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai, Elecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yamenu ki Kedesh. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Venashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yamenu Kikedesh. There's a story from our ancient texts that tells us that at least the second temple was destroyed due to baseless hatred. What is baseless hatred, or sinat chinam? And why is it so detrimental? And is there any hatred that is not baseless? I'm going to read a narrative of the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, and how that small difference in name is said by many of our great sages to have caused perhaps the destruction of the second temple in Jerusalem. And then I would like to open it up for some actual discussion to see what we might all think about sinat chinam, baseless hatred, or anything that this narrative might spark within you. Act 1, Scene 1, setting. We are at a mansion in Jerusalem during the Second Temple period, about the 1st century of the Common Era. The Roman Empire is in control, but the Jews have a fragile relationship at best with the Romans. It is said Jerusalem was destroyed on account of these two men, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. The host of a party at the mansion says, "Servant, I'm throwing a feast. Please invite my friend Kamsa." Servant says, "Yes, sir." Scene 2. The same mansion in Jerusalem. The servant mistakenly invited the host's mortal enemy, Bar Kamsa, instead of his friend, Kamsa. The host says, "Bar Kamsa, what are you doing here, sitting at my feast? You know I don't like you. In fact, I hate you. Get up, get out, go away." Bar Kamsa replies, "Since I have already come, let me stay, and I'll give you money for whatever I eat and drink. Please just do not humiliate me by making me leave in front of all of these people." The host says, "No, you have to leave." Bar Kamsa replies, "I will give you the money for half of the feast. Please just don't send me away." The host says, "No, Bar Kamsa, get up, get out." Bar Kamsa replies again, "Okay, I will give you all the money for the entire feast. I will pay for the whole thing. Please, just don't send me away." The host says, "No, you must leave. Get up, get out." The host then took Bar Kamsa by the hand, by the arm, stood him up in front of everybody, in front of sages and great rabbis, and threw him out. Act 2. Scene 1. Where are we? Just outside the mansion. Bar Kamsa says, since the rabbis were sitting there and did not protest the actions of the host, even though they saw how he humiliated me, they must be okay with what I did. I will go and I will inform against them to the Roman emperor. Scene 2. Setting: the imperial palace in Rome. Bar Kamsa says to the emperor, Your Majesty, the Jews are rebelling against you. The emperor says, who says this is the case? Bar Kamsa, go and test them. Send them an offering on behalf of the government of Rome and see if they will sacrifice it. See if they will honor you. The emperor says, okay, I will. I will send a choice 3-year-old calf, our finest. Scene 3. Setting: on the road back to the temple, Bar Kamsa thinks, I will give the calf a blemish on its upper lip or maybe on its eyelid. This way, it will be blemished according to the Jewish law, but not according to Roman law. The Jews won't be able to sacrifice it, but they won't be able to explain it away to the Romans, and revenge will be mine. Act 3, Scene 1. Setting: back at the temple. The rabbis are looking at this animal with the blemish. They say, even with this blemish, we should sacrifice the animal as an offering. It's important to maintain good relations with the government. We should do it. A rabbi named Zechariah ben Avkalas says, well, if the priests do that, people will say that blemished animals may be sacrificed as offerings on the altar. It's a slippery slope. The rabbis reply, but if we don't sacrifice it, we must prevent Bar Kamsa from reporting this to the emperor. We should kill him so he can't inform against us. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalas says, but if you kill him, people will say that one who makes a blemish on a sacrificed animal ought to be killed. That's not the law. As a result, they did nothing. They stood by. Bar Kamsa and his slander, it was accepted by the authorities, and consequently the war between the Jews and the Romans began. Scene 2, final scene. Setting: right outside Jerusalem. Rabbi Yochanan says, the excessive humility of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalas destroyed our temple, burned our sanctuary, and exiled us from our land. Rabbi Elazar says, come and see how great is the power of shame. For the Holy One, blessed be God, assisted Bar Kamsa, who had been humiliated, and due to this humiliation, God destroyed God's temple and burned God's sanctuary. End of narrative. I have a microphone. While that's a lot to take in, this is a famous story from Talmud. Any thoughts about why this might be such an important story, and what does it say, perhaps, about human behavior or baseless hatred, or sinat chinam? I want to open it up for conversation if anyone has thoughts about that, or questions maybe. There's a lot going on. Sure, and I will give you the microphone so anyone on live stream can hear us as well.
My understanding is that baseless hatred implies or means unforgiving hatred. And that's what occurred in the home. The host did not forgive. What is his name again?
The host was not named.
He was, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But he did not forgive Bar
Kamsa, yes.
Bar Hamsa. He did not forgive Bar Hamsa, even though Bar Hamsa made several entreaties for forgiveness. That's basically what he meant, I think, by wishing to stay.
Thank you. Great points. Any other thoughts? Perhaps about how this began at a seemingly small event, and how the story describes the ending. What is that saying to anybody? Sure, Helen. Any thoughts are good.
I think it's talking about the power of hatred. You know, here's this person who is hated by an enemy, and the host cannot let go of his hate, and that hate grows because Bar Hamsa brings that hate with him out of the house, and it multiplies.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. Was there another thought brewing in the group? Sure, Donna.
I'm puzzled because at the end it is stated by the rabbis that God is the one who destroyed the temple. And it was a war that was started. Is it God's fault that the war started?
I was wondering if anybody would comment on God destroyed God's temple and burned God's sanctuary. Yes, interesting that it did not say the Romans. Any thoughts about that? Why that? Opinions about why that might be? Why that language was used? Like punishments? See, Carol Ann has a thought. I'll give you the mic so everyone can hear your thoughts. Yeah.
How holy can a place be if the people are not holy themselves? So does God want this temple? Does God want to be revered and praised and with a group of people who don't conduct themselves with their holiness? So it's been sullied.
Thank you. Andrea.
Maybe God felt that by destroying the temple, it would open their eyes, and they needed to see what can happen when you let anger just manifest so badly.
Any other thoughts? These are all great thoughts. There's no right or wrong answer.
I think that anger, the anger that the host had toward Baruch Hu, that hatred is a very much a denial of God, because in our tradition, God is within everyone and everything. So that's my commentary.
Yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts? Donna.
It is said that anger destroys the vessel in which it is held. And in this particular instance, it is the host who is being destroyed by this anger and hatred that he feels.
That's a great point. Is the host nameless on purpose? Is the host the people as a whole, the general population that stood by while one was hated? And the great point was brought up. If God destroyed God's temple and God's sanctuary and burned Jerusalem, if we hate any person, if we are created b'tselem Elohim in the image of God, is that a hatred toward God? And also, what it sparks in me, among many other things, is our actions in situations that might seem run-of-the-mill or mundane. This wasn't at the temple where Bar Kamsa was thrown out of. This was in everyday life. This was at a party or a feast. And an error was made by the servant. Was it an error? Perhaps not. Perhaps this was an opportunity for Bar Kamsa and the host people or person to make up, to make amends. But this opportunity was not taken. If we see everything in life as an opportunity, there were 3 instances of opportunity in the story, and all were denied. The effects were devastating, impactful, and grew and grew and grew from this one interaction. Maybe we feel it's small. Maybe we feel our words. We're so about words in Judaism, that words matter, that God created everything through divarim, through words. There's so much power in them, perhaps, that they have the ability to destroy or to build. Just something to think about. And there is a lot in there. I wanted to shift a little bit and have a small conversation about, okay, that was then. Is there baseless hatred in the world now? Sinat chinam. What is it? You don't have to answer all of these. And what can we do as Jews who are about faith and action? Is there hatred in the world? Do we even need to say baseless hatred? Because like I said at the beginning, is there any hatred that has a solid base at all? Something to consider. I can read some numbers about baseless hatred as well. Oftentimes, Jewish people, perhaps, are a good example today. We have anti-Semitism, racism, discrimination based upon gender, sexual orientation, any other characteristic. Anti-Semitic incidents in the US rose 36% in 2022, according to an annual audit by the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. Anti-Semitic harassment increased 29%, from 1,776 cases to 2,298 cases. Anti-Semitic vandalism increased 51%, from 853 cases to 1,288 cases. And anti-Semitic assaults increased from 26%, from 88 to 111. And these are just the reported numbers that were able to be captured. Why? How is the name of the book, Eicha. Lamentations is called Eicha. How? That's a big question, but I open it up for discussion. How today does this story relate in any area of life? And there might be people yelling it out on live stream, and I'm sorry if I cannot hear you. Are we past baseless hatred? How do we combat it, at least?
Well, to my mind, whenever a person scapegoats another person or group of people, as the Jews have been scapegoated throughout history, and as other minorities are scapegoated, that is a sin against oneself and against God.
Thank you. Sure.
I think it'd be lovely if we could say that the antidote to hatred is love. But I think really the antidote to hatred is education. I think people feel hatred when they don't understand something. And they also use it to bond with each other in a really negative way, but effective, so that the things that are challenges for them can be what draws them together.
Common enemy, right? Thank you. Yes, that's a great point. I have another question, so I just don't want to cut anybody off if they have comments, because these are all good and worth considering. So there was another moment or moments in this story that sparked my personal interest, and it wasn't necessarily baseless hatred, but it was what I would call, in the modern day, maybe the bystander effect. Toward the end of the story, we hear the impacts, destruction, etc. But we know at the beginning, at the feast, there were many people there. Bar Kamsa, he makes comment on that. He says, the rabbis stood by and they did nothing. Doing nothing can be doing something. Has anyone ever heard the story? It's very famous, of Kitty Genovese. The famous story, I'll just briefly. It's not a pleasant story, but it's important, especially in social psychology. March 13th, 1964, 28-year-old Kitty Genovese was arriving home from work in the middle of the night in Queens, New York, when she was brutally stabbed to death. Horrific incident. This led to the coining of the term bystander effect, a phenomenon that describes how people are less likely to offer help to a victim when other people are present. Why? It was reported that 38 bystanders watched or heard the attack occur, but did nothing. They instead relied on others to intervene, call the police, call for help. How? Eicha. Any comments about inaction when we see something wrong? Maybe not as extreme as this occurrence. What can we do? Sure, Andrea.
I think sometimes inaction is almost as bad as action.
I agree. Steve.
First, everything's a choice, whether you're going to react or not react. The three main characters in the Bar Kamsa story, one was a perpetrator, one was a bystander, or a group were bystanders, and one was the victim. Yehuda Bauer, speaking at the UN at the first Holocaust Remembrance Day, talked about, in his opinion, the new 11th, 12th, and 13th commandments. Never be a victim, never be a perpetrator, and never be a bystander. You may or may not want to get into the question of whether any of the protagonists in the story had free will. Or is everybody a messenger or a malach or an angel of God with choices? And how you choose depends on it. By the way, with the Kitty Genovese story, most of the bystanders, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, were looking out the windows of their apartment house windows and basically just shut the blinds and went back to sleep.
Thank you. Yeah, that raises a lot of great questions and points. And in one of the, I guess you could say, traps we could fall into and criticisms that we could have of the reaction, even the Book of Lamentations, is victim blaming. Has the ability, though, of the Jewish people to look inward and say, what did I do? What did we do? What could we change? Has that maintained our peoplehood? Instead of saying, they did this to us, they did this to us. Which, of course, is largely the case when we talk about things like the Holocaust and things like that. Of course, there were victims. But has it kept the Jewish people to react in such a way where we say all these terrible things are happening? What can we do differently? It's a very strong message. Whether or not we agree with it is another story, but it's worth considering when things aren't going well, the history of the Jewish people turning inward, engaging in what we might call cheshbon hanefesh, accounting for the soul, which we all do during the High Holy Days. We turn inward. we say, what did we do? What could we change? Interesting to consider. Any other thoughts about any of this? Okay. If you change your mind, I'll get up. So I wrote some thoughts down. Inaction is action. We kind of said that. No decision can be a decision. Do we ever stand frozen, figuratively or literally speaking, because someone else will do it? Someone else will take care of it. There's enough people. I can't be the one. The worst that could happen, in my opinion, if we all act, is that we have more hands. Like I said, we as Jews are people of faith and action. We must say, and we must also do. So today, we mourn and remember the tragedies of the past. For as our Mishkan Tefillah says, what happened once upon a time happens all the time. Remembering helps us be prepared to prevent. We have endured so much struggle as a people. Yet here we are. We have survived and we have thrived. And perhaps one of the reasons for our survival can be found in our ability to turn inward and in our remembrance, in remembering. At any simcha, right, any joyous occasion, we never lose a sense of reality. We never get lost in the joy. As much as we try to let it encompass us, we color joy with remembrance at a wedding, when we shatter the glass to remember the temples, at a Pesach Seder, when we take wine from our own cups to remember the suffering of even those who oppressed us. Through pain, through choshech, through darkness, there is always light. There is always, even on a sad, mournful day, hope. Tikva. Finding hope in pain has helped keep the Jewish people for thousands of years. When we could so many times have lost faith and said, not anymore, we have said what I will now sing. Ani ma'amin. I believe. I believe with complete faith in the coming of Mashiach, of better days. And we have our youngest up here who have created light. We see hope in light. Be careful of the flames. Ani ma'amin, I believe with complete faith in the coming of Mashiach, which might be a time, an era, an age of completeness, of shalom. Even though this might delay, nevertheless, I yearn for this coming. We have faith, we have hope. And if you know it, you can sing along. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin. המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. ויף על פי שיתממע, עם כל זה אני מאמין. ויף על פי שיתממע, עם כל זה אני מאמין. To conclude, I would like to invite all of you into the social hall to take a left and to sign our own codal wall, if you will, our own Temple Isaiah wall of tikva, wall of hope, with your personal message of hope for anyone who might come across your brick to read as we move forward as a community together. At the end of any mourning period, we can say, may we now go forward, l'chaim, to life.